Hello and welcome to the Luv Doc podcast with hosts Waldo Wachewski and Ophelia Brewski.
You know that feeling when you finally take this, terrifying leap of faith to trust someone and then it just completely blows up in your face?
Oh, yeah. The absolute worst.
Right. And your brain just immediately screams at you, never ever do that again.
Yeah, it's a total survival reflex.
Exactly. Well, today we are looking at this fascinating Luv Doc, and he basically argues that listening to that primal instinct is, well, it's the fastest way to ruin your life.
Yeah, it's such a bold claim. The column is titled Show Your Scars. And it's a remarkably candid piece of writing.
It really is.
It's just raw, unfiltered, lived experience. And he's tackling that age-old question, is love actually worth the massive risk of getting hurt?
So our mission today is really to unpack that. We're looking at this supernatural human instinct to build emotional walls after we experience trauma.
Which is something I think everyone does to some extent.
Oh, totally. But the Luv Doc makes this deeply counterintuitive argument that inviting pain, actually leaning into the possibility of getting hurt, is the only real way to avoid ending up completely alone.
And to understand why he makes this kind of wild claim, we really have to look at the letter that prompted it.
Yeah, the letter writer.
Right. So the writer signs off as Leery of Love. And Leery presents this dilemma that I think really resonates because it touches on the foundational architecture of how we learn to trust people or, how we don't.
Because Leery didn't just have a bad breakup, right? This fear of vulnerability started at the absolute root.
Right. Childhood.
Yeah. They grew up with parents who were, by their own admission, just incredibly messed up. Parents who brought out the absolute worst versions of each other.
Which is so tough.
Yeah.
Because growing up in an environment like that, where your primary model for romantic love is basically a toxic feedback loop, you are starting from a profound deficit.
A huge deficit. The writer explicitly says they have never seen an example of what a healthy relationship even looks like.
Right. And the psychological mechanism there is just crucial to understand. Because when a child witnesses constant relational chaos, their developing nervous system actually maps intimacy directly to danger.
Wow. So it's literally wired into them.
Exactly. Intimacy isn't associated with safety or comfort at all. It is coded in the brain as a literal threat to survival.
And that nervous system mapping really sets the stage for the catalyst in this story. Because a couple of years ago, Leery meets someone.
Right, the new guy.
Yeah. And the way they describe this person is just intense. They say it genuinely felt like a horrible addiction to be around him.
Which is such a red flag phrasing right there.
Total red flag. It wasn't like, oh, I met someone who made me feel safe and secure. It was described like a narcotic.
Yeah, and that trap of the addictive personality in relationships, it so often mimics the feeling of profound intimacy.
How so? Why do we confuse those two?
Well, we're basically looking at intermittent reinforcement. When someone is unpredictable, your brain just pumps out dopamine every single time they give you a mere breadcrumb of affection.
Oh, man, the breadcrumbs.
Right. It creates this trauma bond that feels incredibly powerful. So the brain confuses the massive anxiety of not knowing where you stand with, the butterflies of true love.
That makes so much sense. And Leary's nervous system was already primed for chaos by their parents.
Exactly. It recognized this turbulent dynamic as familiar. So Leery takes this massive leap and actually shares a highly vulnerable moment with this guy.
And this is the part that just broke my heart reading it, because instead of holding space for that vulnerability, the guy mocks Leery.
Yeah, it's awful.
He literally makes fun of them in this incredibly exposed moment, and the aftermath is just devastating. Leery describes having this massive emotional wall up now, unable to even flirt.
They feel like they can't even want connection anymore.
Right. And you can see how the confirmation bias just locks into place,
Oh, absolutely. When you already fear that being known equals being hurt, and then you're finally known, and you just get humiliated.
The brain is like, aha, I told you so.
Yes, the brain cements that association as an absolute, undeniable truth. The neurological pathways just solidify.
When I was reading this, I initially thought of touching a hot stove. You touch a lead-hot burner, you get burned, and your brain ensures you never, ever touch it again.
Right, a basic physical reflex.
But it's actually so much deeper than that, isn't it? It's almost like an autoimmune response.
Oh, I like that analogy. Say more about that.
Well, it's like the brain's emotional immune system gets so hypervigilant from this one bad virus, this toxic X, that it starts attacking healthy tissue.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It attacks the very human connections that Leery actually needs to survive, just to ensure they never catch a cold again.
That autoimmune analogy perfectly captures the danger here. because the defense mechanism actually becomes more destructive than the original threat.
Right, because it's shutting down everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The brain honestly thinks it's doing you a huge favor by shutting down your capacity for connection. It says, vulnerability leads to mockery, therefore we must eliminate vulnerability entirely.
The internal logic is totally flawless.
Flawless, but completely isolating.
And if the internal logic is flawless, telling someone to ignore it sounds kind of insane, right? Like, if my emotional immune system is just protecting me, the Luv Doc is essentially telling me to deliberately expose myself to the virus again.
Yeah, his advice to Leery is stunningly blunt. He just says, lean in.
Just lean in. It's so wild.
It is. But he backs up that directive with his sweeping assertion about his own life.
Right. He talks about his own experiences.
Yeah, he says that after more than a few trips around the sun, literally none of the magnificent mystical or transformational moments of his life were the result of protecting himself emotionally.
None of them. That's a huge statement.
He's basically saying the absolute best parts of the human experience exist exclusively on the other side of that emotional wall.
And to illustrate this, he uses this really interesting metaphor of physical scars versus emotional one.
The broken nose metaphor.
Yes. He talks about how bobbing and weaving in life to protect himself might have saved him a broken nose, and he casually mentions he's had at least 3 of those.
Which is pretty funny.
Yeah, but he says that avoiding the hits usually just bobbed him into even worse trouble.
Right, because when you're frantically trying to dodge pain, you lose your footing entirely.
You aren't really navigating life anymore.
Exactly. You are just reacting to fear. So you might avoid the punch, sure, but you stumble backward right into oncoming traffic.
That's such a great way to put it.
And the doc points out that his most painful scars are actually the things that make for the very best stories and honestly the most profound personal growth.
See, okay, I get the narrative appeal of having good scars, but I really have to push back hard on this part of the column.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because it is incredibly easy for an advice columnist to just sit behind a keyboard and say, hey, take the hits,
Fair point.
If I am trapped behind a massive wall of deep emotional pain, telling me my trauma is just going to be a fun, cool story later, it feels completely dismissive.
It really does sound like he's minimizing the damage.
Yeah, it feels like he's minimizing the very real, very heavy psychological damage that Leery is dealing with every single day.
I totally get why it reads that way.
Right.
And if you look at it solely as a call to just tough it out, it absolutely sounds dismissive.
Right, just get over it.
But the doc is actually offering a really practical, tactical reframing of the pain.
Okay, how so?
Well, he looks at this terrible ex, and he completely validates that the guy was a, quote, dick.
Well, I'm glad we agree on that.
Right. But then he pivots. He tells Leery that the sheer act of finding someone to feel addicted to, the act of actually taking the risk to open up in the first place, was a transformative experience.
So the risk itself was the win.
Exactly. He isn't saying the pain doesn't matter. He is saying the pain has utility.
Utility. I mean, utility implies I can use this pain for something productive. How on earth does a humiliating emotional betrayal have utility?
Because the world is absolutely teeming with insecure assholes.
Unfortunately, yes, that is a fact.
It is a statistical guarantee. You are going to encounter them. And getting burned by one is exactly how you develop the highly specialized skill of spotting them in the future.
Oh, I see.
The doc reframes the addictive to sex not as this catastrophic mistake, but as a mandatory stress test.
A stress test. That's a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, because you really can't learn your own emotional capacity in a vacuum. You kind of have to risk opening up to the wrong person to prove to your own nervous system that you can actually survive the emotional fallout.
And now Leery actually knows what the red flags look like in the wild.
Exactly. You know what a dopamine-fueled trauma bond feels like now versus what a genuinely safe connection would feel like?
Are you miffled that no one thought to buy you some flossy Luv Doc merch for your last birthday, anniversary, bat or bar mitzvah, graduation, baby or bridal shower? Your outrage is completely justified. Let it out and then get some revenge on your unthoughtful friends and loved ones by web surfing over to thepleasurecraft.com and buying all the dope merch your closets and storage spaces can hold. Remember, money is only temporary, but Luv Doc merch lasts easily a decade or so with proper care. At least that's what the merch company rep told us when he took us to that expensive strip club.
So the broken nose is basically a lesson in how to keep your guard up in the ring next time without just leaving the arena entirely.
Spot on. Next time Leery feels excited about someone, they might be a bit more cautious about opening up right away. And that caution is a feature, not a bug.
Right. It's protective, but not isolating.
Yeah, and he tells the writer directly that being cautious next time is perfectly fine. You just can't let the bad actors scare you away from your own humanity.
Because reaching out and connecting is what makes us human.
Exactly.
But let's follow this logic for a second. If getting hurt is guaranteed, and my only reward is that I become a highly skilled detector of insecure assholes,
Yeah.
why not just opt out entirely? I mean, our society actually rewards hiding. We don't call it hiding, though we call it being independent.
Oh, the temptation to just build a beautiful, cozy little cabin behind that emotional wall and go it alone is immense.
It sounds so peaceful, honestly.
It does. And the Luv Doc targets this exact temptation. He argues that the alternative, just going it alone, is based on a deeply dangerous cultural myth.
A myth.
Yeah. He says that being this guarded, calculating person who never, ever lets their guard down, it isn't brave. It is simply a highly effective way to end up friendless, abandoned, and entirely alone.
Ouch. But it's true. We think we look so incredibly cool when we ice someone out.
Oh, yeah. We all think we're movie stars.
Right. We imagine we're Clint Eastwood squinting into the sunset, totally unbothered, just protecting our peace.
Or the wandering monk in Kung Fu.
Yes. Or Humphrey Bogart, just leaning against a bar looking mysterious. American mythology loves to romanticize the aloof loner.
We really do. We frame isolation as strength, like this kind of stoic superiority. But the doc just completely shatters that illusion.
What does he compare it to?
He points out that in reality, most true loners don't end up looking like Clint Eastwood. They lean much closer to Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver.
Oh, wow. Travis Bickle is like the definition of profound, corrosive alienation.
Right. It's not cool. It's deeply disturbed and totally disconnected from reality.
And didn't he mention another movie character, too?
Yeah. Or worse yet, Jesse Plemons in the film Begonia.
Oh, man. It's just incredibly bleak.
Very bleak. The doc is basically telling Leery, I don't want that for you, even if your theory about vulnerability leading to pain is completely correct.
Because there's a biological reality here, isn't there?
Absolutely. There is a biological reality at play that completely overrides our psychological fears. Humans are inherently social creatures.
We thrive in groups. We have to.
We do. The mythology tries to sell us independence as the ultimate goal, but our biology literally demands connection.
Right. Like historically speaking.
Yeah, if you look at evolutionary history, being separated from the tribe on the savannah was a death sentence. Our nervous systems literally interpret social isolation as mortal danger.
Which brings up the Luv Doc's incredibly dark analogy of what actually happens to true loners in the wild.
It's so darkly funny.
It is. He says they basically end up being eaten by bears, or they have to saw their own arm off with a dull pocket knife because there's literally nobody around to roll the boulder off them.
It's such a visceral, unforgettable image.
It really sticks with you because when you ghost someone who made you feel a little too exposed, you think you are protecting yourself.
Right. You pull away at the first sign of friction.
But by choosing to be the aloof loner, you are really just setting yourself up for the dull pocket knife.
That is exactly it.
Because life will always drop boulders on you. That's guaranteed. And when that boulder inevitably falls, you are going to want someone there to help you push it off.
Yeah. The wall doesn't keep the danger out at all. It just traps you inside with your own fear.
It isolates you with it. Okay, so the wall doesn't protect you, it traps you. But how does Leery of Love actually begin to dismantle this architecture?
It's a huge undertaking.
Because we're still dealing with the foundational trauma here, the childhood filled with toxic examples of love. You can't just tell someone with decades of nervous system programming to just, stop hiding.
No, you absolutely can't.
Right.
And the doc addresses the lingering issue of the writer's unhappy parents head on.
Does he tell them to go to therapy?
Well, he doesn't minimize the trauma of growing up in that environment, but instead, he offers this really powerful psychological reframe.
Okay, I love a good reframe.
Right. We often think of trauma as this blueprint that we're just doomed to repeat. But the doc argues the exact opposite.
The opposite.
Yeah, he says that experiencing miserable parents does not make you genetically predetermined to live in matrimonial misery. He says it acts as an emotional vaccine.
An emotional vaccine. Okay, let's break down how that emotional vaccine actually works in practice, because it's not just a poetic metaphor.
No, it's very real neurology.
Right. When you grow up in that chaos, your amygdala becomes hypertuned to specific micro-expressions of contempt or manipulation or passive aggression.
Oh, absolutely. You notice every little shift in tone.
Exactly. So you aren't just metaphorically immune. Your nervous system has literally mapped out the exact behavioral patterns of a toxic partner.
Which allows you to unconsciously spot those red flags before a securely attached person would even notice them.
Right, because that hypervigilance, which obviously feels like a total curse when it's driving your anxiety, it's actually an incredibly sophisticated radar system.
That's such a great way to view it. You have seen the worst-case scenario up close. You know exactly what a toxic feedback loop sounds like.
You know the script.
Yeah. Therefore, you are actually protected against it in a way a securely attached person might not be.
Because they've never had to look for it.
Exactly. They might miss the subtle red flags completely.
Yeah.
But Leery has antibodies against that specific type of relational misery. They just have to trust that their immune system actually knows what it's doing now.
Wow. So with this new framework, the painful ex was a stress test to build emotional capacity, and the terrible parents were basically an emotional vaccine. The doc issues his call to action.
The big finale.
He tells Leery to tear down the wall. Start flirting again. Open up. Be honest. Be brave. And actually show your scars.
But he adds a really crucial caveat right at the end of that advice. He says, when you're ready.
Oh, I like that.
When you're ready. It's vital. Because this isn't about reckless abandon.
Yeah.
Right? It isn't about ignoring your boundaries and just throwing yourself at the first person who smiles at you.
Right. That would just be self-sabotage.
Exactly. It is about intentional, courageous vulnerability on your own timeline.
And he concludes with this ultimate reassurance, saying the hits are worth it because ultimately, good people don't really care what the assholes think.
That line just anchors the entire philosophy for me.
It's a great line.
Because the core message is really about accepting that vulnerability is the absolute price of admission for a fulfilling human experience. There are no free passes.
None at all.
If you let the mocking ex, or the toxic parents, or just the general fear of the insecure assholes dictate your capacity for connection, well, they win twice.
They win twice. Because they hurt you in the past, and now you're allowing them to rob you of your future joy.
Exactly. You are literally doing their job for them by building the wall.
So the takeaway isn't just some generic self-help platitude about, just be brave. It's the realization that pain is not a failure of the system. It is a feature of the system.
Right. True resilience is trusting your newly developed radar for bad behavior and stepping back into the arena anyway.
Okay, let's pull all these threads together for a second. We explored the very logical reason why our brains desperately want to build emotional walls after getting burned.
That autoimmune response that shuts down connection just to prevent any future pain.
Right. And we looked at the Luv Doc's philosophy that avoiding pain usually just bobs and weaves us into even worse trouble, isolating us from the best parts of life entirely.
We dismantled the fallacy of the cool American loner myth.
Yes. Realizing that isolation just leaves you trapped under a metaphorical boulder with a really dull pocket knife.
Not a place you want to be.
Definitely not. And finally, we reframed past traumas. Our scars aren't these shameful secrets we have to hide behind walls. They are emotional vaccines.
They are the very things that make us wise, capable, and hyper-tuned to spotting the right people.
It fundamentally changes how you view your own history of being hurt.
It really does.
So we've talked a lot about spotting the bad apples, right? The insecure assholes of the world, and how getting burned gives you the radar to identify them.
Yeah, that's stress test.
Well, let's take it one step further. If our emotional scars are exactly what make us wise, interesting, and capable of spotting those bad apples, does that mean we actually need the insecure assholes of the world to help us figure out who the good people are?
Oh, that's an intense thought.
Right. Just imagine a world without them. If you never got burned, if you never had to navigate the pain of betrayal or mockery, would you even possess the depth required to recognize genuine, safe compassion when it finally sits down next to you?
You might just take it entirely for granted.
Exactly. Maybe the burn is the very thing that teaches you how to recognize the warmth of a real fire. Thank you all for joining us on this Luv Doc podcast. Take a look at your own walls today and maybe, just maybe, see if you can take down a good or two.
To read the column that spawned this podcast, go to austinchronicle.com/columns/the Luv Doc. There are probably worse things to do with your time, right?